If everyone could stand up, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer, and I want you to think of the last 7 days. How many of you have exercised in the last week? Please remain standing if you have, and sit down if you haven't. How many of you have had a meatless meal 3 or more nights this week? Of the left standing, how many of you wear a helmet every time you bike? Well, if you are standing right now, congratulations, you have reduced your risk of Alzheimer's and engaged in activities that promote brain health. Hi, my name is Juha Park, and today I'm going to give you a presentation on reducing the risk, how to prevent the possibilities of Alzheimer's disease, which is a type of dementia, and what you can do in your everyday life. I've always been interested in the medical world, with K-dramas and Grey's Anatomy, along with my parents pressing the idea of me becoming a doctor early on in my life. And I had imagined I would do something in the medical realm for my Masterworks. However, I wanted a personal connection to this project. That's when I thought of my grandparents, who had passed away, and both their connection to dementia and Alzheimer's disease. They had the disease before they passed, and this made me question the risks for my parents and the early onset. That's when I decided to center my Masterworks around Alzheimer's and the potential risks. In this presentation, you will learn about an overview on Alzheimer's disease, specifically the early onset, the pathology, or in other words, the biological side of the disease and the treatment, my research question, and the do's, the don'ts, and the maybes. Now, the Alzheimer's overview. What is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? The widespread belief that dementia and Alzheimer's are the same and can be used interchangeably is incorrect. Dementia is a general umbrella used to classify different neurodegenerative disorders, such as Alzheimer's, which makes about 50 to 75% of dementia cases, along with vascular dementia, 20 to 30%, Lewy body, 10 to 25%, and frontal temporal, or referred as FTD, 10 to 15%. Alzheimer's is one specific type of dementia under the larger umbrella term. Now, a quick background on Alzheimer's disease. It was founded by this guy, or known as Alois Alzheimer. He's a German scientist and discovered the disease in 1906 after noticing something unusual about a patient's brain who had symptoms like memory loss and disorientation. This then became known as Alzheimer's disease. All right, now I want you to look at this photo, and if I were to ask you to assume one person in this photo has Alzheimer's disease, I'm going to guess it would be this person. But what if I actually said it was this woman? My presentation will be mainly focused on early onset Alzheimer's disease, which can be referred as EOAD. The current definition of EOAD is when individuals develop Alzheimer's before the age of 65. If symptoms occur in people over 65, they're considered to have late onset Alzheimer's disease, LOAD. 65 is the cutoff age due to the large majority of people being diagnosed later in life. Now, you might be wondering, what are the symptoms of Alzheimer's? There are a number of symptoms, and not everyone will experience them, as it is very case-by-case dependent. But generally, the symptoms include memory loss, difficulty remembering recent events, conversations, or newly learned information, difficulty finding the right words, struggling to recall names or objects, trouble with spatial reasoning, difficulty judging distances or getting lost in familiar places, changes in personality, becoming more withdrawn, anxious, or irritable, and disengagement from social activities, avoiding social gatherings and hobbies. Now, to understand Alzheimer's disease slightly more, we will take a look at the pathology, which means the cause and the origin of the disease. There are several hypotheses to what leads to Alzheimer's. However, I will not be going into that in my presentation. Instead, I'll be focusing on the hallmarks of Alzheimer's pathology, which can be beneficial in understanding the risk factors. Now, I won't lie, this section is quite heavy, so bear with me, but we can get through it. It'll make the rest of the presentation easier to understand. Firstly, the amyloid beta protein plays a role in the communication between neurons, which is essential for learning and memory. It's like a phone call. However, when amyloid beta is abnormally produced, it becomes problematic, which causing that phone call to be disrupted. A lot of different factors I will mention later will contribute to the amyloid beta buildup. The amyloid beta protein comes from the amyloid precursor protein. When it produces the protein, it also creates fragments called amyloid peptides and eventually becomes plaques, which can be seen in Alzheimer's disease brains. The next hallmark is the tau protein. This is found inside cells. This is a healthy neuron, and in the cell there are microtubules, and the tau is what keeps this together. it stabilizes microtubules, which are hollow-like tube structures found in the cytoplasm of plant and animal cells. Stable microtubules are crucial for maintaining cell structure, enabling cell division, and helping transport other proteins. They are found in neurons. There's a process called phosphorylation, and this makes sure that the tau is working properly. It is essential for healthy brain function. However, when the tau protein does not work properly, the tubes destabilize, causing the protein to clump together to form tangles called neurofibrillary tangles. You might be thinking of these things, but it's more like this, the orange tangle on the neuron. The neurofibrillary tangles interfere with the stability and the function of microtubules in neurons, restricting the transport of essential proteins and disrupting communication. If the neurons can't communicate, they don't work and eventually die. And this neuronal degeneration and death is a very important aspect of Alzheimer's progression. So, now that you know what happens in the brain, I will describe what the diagnosis process is like. So, how does someone become diagnosed with Alzheimer's? It starts with family members noticing the initial symptoms, as I previously mentioned. Once the patient has been referred to a neurologist, the initial steps of the diagnosis will begin. I got the amazing opportunity to go to the UBC neurology department. And how do I know that's the neurology department? They even put neurons on the building. I met a neurologist who meets and diagnoses patients with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia on a daily basis. Dr. Yara Alcoder walked me through her daily life. So first, she would observe the patient starting in the waiting room. So next time you're at the doctor's, make sure to be hyper aware that they're watching you even in the waiting room. When Dr. Alcoder calls the patient, she's immediately assessing their level of independence, as things as little as noticing their name has been called and how confidently they walk towards her. So she first starts with a daily living questionnaire, such as recent symptoms they've been experiencing, and this interview involves the patient's family. She then proceeds with an examination, such as a gyrocognitive exam, to observe categorizing objects, simple math, remembering instructions, and retaining simple information. Other tests include mini mental state examinations that cover some similar information. Once a neurologist makes an initial assumption of Alzheimer's, they then test for cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF. CSF is procured by a lumbar puncture, more commonly known as a spinal tap. They stick a needle into your spine to take out the spinal fluid to test for amyloid beta and tau biomarkers. It will then go to the lab testing to see the results. To get a confirmed diagnosis of Alzheimer's, the biomarkers will look like a seesaw. So, amyloid likes to be high and tau likes to be low. But if tau is high and amyloid is low, no one is happy. And that analogy can represent the imbalance that suggests the presence of Alzheimer's. If the results come back with an indication of Alzheimer's, there can be another initial scan called the magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI. There is a very fancy and nice MRI in the UBC neurology department, and it looks like this. This scan can be helpful to reveal any structural changes in brain atrophy or shrinkage of certain areas. So, this is a healthy brain compared to an Alzheimer's diseased brain. You can see the brain atrophy or the shrinkage around the perimeter of the brain and the enlarged ventricles compared to the healthy brain. All right. In most cases, more than one type of dementia is present. It is a combination of multiple dementias called mixed dementia. For example, a patient can have vascular dementia, which impacts memory, behavior, and different parts of the brain negatively, affected due to the blockage and damage to blood vessels in the brain. And you can see here the Alzheimer's diseased brain and the mixed dementia, which has vascular and Alzheimer's together. There is significant brain atrophy, as well as white matter along the edges of the ventricle. So this is due to the vascular dementia having more inflammation and fluid from the blockage in the blood vessels. At this moment, there is no cure for Alzheimer's. There are several drugs approved to treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's. Focus on the word symptoms. Again, there is no cure. There are some that can be used at any stage of Alzheimer's to reduce the symptoms. Some drugs are used to mild to moderate, and some for severe. Recently, there have been 3 drugs that have been controversially approved called the monoclonal antibody, a synthetic protein created to specifically target disease, MAB. The MABs are symptomatic drugs recommended in the early stages of Alzheimer's. This is the current approved drug, though clinical trials and more research is being conducted. When I started writing my paper, I wanted to do a general research paper on early onset Alzheimer's disease. However, my external advisor, Dr. Hyunwoo Lee, advised me to create a formal research paper following the proper steps. He helped me realize that I was being way too broad, and because I could go on and on about Alzheimer's far longer than 40 pages. So I was told to create a specific research question. After my visit at the clinic with interviews and a lot of reading, I created my question. Additionally, when dealing with a disease that has no cure, it can sometimes be hard to remain positive. So for my project, I wanted to focus on things that people have control over or a sense of agency. So my research question is, what are the factors within our control that help prevent the risk of early onset Alzheimer's disease? This is an urgent question because globally, the Alzheimer's disease population has predicted to nearly triple by 2050. And right now, over 55 million people are living with Alzheimer's. This causes a burden on healthcare costs and an increase in illness and disability. So why does this matter to you? You may have older family members, and this information can be helpful. And starting today, possessing the knowledge can help reduce your own risk of developing Alzheimer's in the future. Understanding the unmodifiable and modifiable risk factors before diagnosis can be beneficial for many different aspects of your health and a better quality of life if you were to get Alzheimer's. And a quick side note, when writing a research paper, it is required to inform the readers how you got this information and your procedure. So what I did was I read a variety of review articles, such as epidemiological studies, which analyze the disease and their cause in populations. An important part of these studies that helps me on this topic is they isolate the different factors and focus on the amount of risk. And it is especially important in studying Alzheimer's because it can show the big, significant risk factors. And Alzheimer's is changing all the time. To stay up to date, I looked at articles from the past 10 years. The amount of disappointment when I saw an article that was so perfect for what I needed to research, and just to find out it's from 1999. Not very recent. All right. Now, what are the modifiable and unmodifiable risk factors? I will define these two terms as I will be referring to them a lot. Unmodifiable factors are risks that cannot be altered. Modifiable risk factors can be defined as preventable and changeable factors that you have control over in your life. I will start with the bad news first. Unfortunately, there are factors that humans cannot change, and well, these suck. But it is important to be aware of them. To be aware of these factors allows people to engage in early intervention, activities, and actions to decrease your risk. There are quite a few factors to consider, and I will focus on age, genetics, and gender. And just to preface, if you happen to fit these factors, it does not mean you will develop Alzheimer's. Now, put your hand up if you're planning to age. All right. The largest unmodifiable risk factor of Alzheimer's disease is age, a natural, irreversible process that no one is immune to at the moment. Age affects various organs and cell systems, a slow decrease in brain volume and weight, and memory loss. In addition to a natural cognitive decline with age, further factors such as depression, high cholesterol, and slowing of metabolism also increase your risk. In the brain specifically, as you age, amyloid beta buildup can occur in the brain naturally due to aging. This happens in people with Alzheimer's and people without, making the diagnosis process extra difficult. While there's nothing you can do about aging, you want to be in the best possible health. Next, a modifiable risk factor is genetics. Approximately 70% of Alzheimer's disease cases are contributed by genetic factors. However, this does not mean you will get the disease, there's just an increase in risk. The major gene mutations that are associated with early onset include amyloid precursor protein, which has one protective mutation out of 25 damaging ones, presenilin 1 and presenilin 2, which both negatively impact the disease, and apolipoprotein E. And this has one harmful form of the protein, apolipoprotein E4. As gene technology increases with the ability to pinpoint specific gene mutations, we will better understand how to diagnose and treat early onset. This is good news because in your lifetime, hopefully, there will be a big breakthrough in reducing the genetic risk factor. These genes and mutations cause different things such as amyloid beta or tau buildup, neuroinflammation, cerebral/hippocampal atrophy, which affect memory and learning, and overall they inhibit brain function in some way. The risk of birth gender is important to note because the makeup of humans differs between men and women. Approximately 2/3 of AD patients are women. Women live longer by about 4.5 years, and there are more women over the age of 85 than men. This combination of age and gender can be significant for female individuals. If you're living a longer life, you're more likely to develop age-related diseases, as well as structural differences that increase your risk for females. These include brain structure, biomarkers, responding to stress, pregnancy, menopause, hormones, and more. Though with all that being said, I'm referring to late onset Alzheimer's disease for this section. For early onset Alzheimer's, the risk is generally the same as far as we know. So not to scare the women in the room, there's no greater risk for early onset, only late onset. Therefore, the more preventative measures taken, the better, and that goes for everyone. Modifiable risk factors can be defined as preventable and changeable factors that you have control over in your life. If an individual is aware of their personal and modifiable risk factors, it is important at any age to be proactive by controlling the modifiable factors. These modifiable factors I will be discussing are generally common health practices advised by many. In this section, I will divide the factors I researched into 3 groups: the do's, the don'ts, and the maybes. I'll start with the don'ts, but before diving into my research, let's see what you think. Raise your hand if you have an idea of something you shouldn't do that could increase your risk of Alzheimer's. Kai? Yeah? Well, you shouldn't get hurt, your brain, yep, that. Alan? Yeah? Maya? Yeah? Max? Yeah? All right, so, sorry. Great, now here's a list of things that you shouldn't avoid: alcohol consumption, poor sleep, social isolation, metal exposure, air pollution exposure, neglecting heart health, traumatic brain injury, and smoking. Now I will be covering 4 different factors: alcohol consumption, smoking, traumatic brain injury, and metal exposure. These are things you want to avoid to reduce your risk. Starting with alcohol consumption, it has never been largely recommended. As for Alzheimer's disease, well, isn't great either, as it is a neurotoxin, meaning it's like poison for your nervous system. While alcohol is not good for your brain, one of the main considerations is the quantity and heavy drinking, which is associated with the most risk. Alcohol has many damaging effects, as it can lead to neuroinflammation, increasing amyloid beta accumulation, and more. It is also linked to your brain shrinking or cerebral atrophy and decreased brain volume. Have I scared you enough? Unlike heavy drinking, moderate and light drinking are not as easily correlated with Alzheimer's risk. However, it does have an impact on your brain and other parts of the body. Next, in a similar sense, is smoking, and I reviewed studies that stated smoking intoxication increases your risk. They divided the participants into non-smokers, quit smokers over 9 years, recently quit less than 9 years, and current smokers. This study resulted in non-smokers and individuals who had quit for longer than 9 years having no increase in risk for Alzheimer's. For current and smokers and recently quit smokers, there was an increase in risk. Meaning, if you quit for less than 9 years, your risk is equivalent to current smokers. Therefore, the earlier the quit, the better. Honestly, the best thing to do is just don't smoke. Problem solved. All right, now, the next thing to refrain from are head injuries, and it may seem obvious. However, a lot of individuals are involved in sports, especially physical ones, such as skiing, snowboarding, hockey, and they can all lead to brain injuries or concussions. 1 or 2 concussions will not increase your risk of Alzheimer's, though repeated head injuries can eventually lead to what is called chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It is a traumatic brain injury. The point being made here is traumatic brain injury can intensify the risk of Alzheimer's with accumulation of other factors. For instance, chronic traumatic encephalopathy and cerebrovascular dysfunction, which is a condition that doesn't allow blood to flow to the brain, can all lead to amyloid beta and tau buildup, as well as inflammation after traumatic brain injury occurs. Traumatic brain injury is more preventable if aware at a young age, so wear your helmets. Another don't involves the exposure or the overconsumption of metals. Lead and aluminum are toxic metals for human beings, and it can add to your risk of Alzheimer's. This has been known for a while, and toxic metals are eliminated in various products. However, with pollution, you may still be exposed to them. It is important to be cautious of lead-based paint and aluminum in your water, as they can harm your brain and lead to Alzheimer's pathologies, so don't go near toxic metals. Moving on to the maybes, or in medical terms, this would be confounding factors, which essentially means it is associated with both the dependent and independent variables, so the factor can contribute to both Alzheimer's disease and other modifiable risk factors. For instance, cardiovascular disease has a set of risk factors, some including high cholesterol, sleep apnea, meaning having trouble breathing while sleeping, and kidney disease. And then there is Alzheimer's disease, which some specific to the disease include traumatic brain injury, as we talked about, and depression. But there are also many shared factors, which can include diet, smoking, hypertension, diabetes, and so on. Therefore, when cardiovascular disease is researched to see if it is a cause of Alzheimer's, it is difficult to determine if it directly affects your risk of Alzheimer's. The confounding factors I researched were cardiovascular disease, hypertension or high blood pressure, diabetes, and depression. I've called these the maybes because of the uncertainty. Additionally, they are all pre-existing medical conditions, and it may seem difficult to control. However, unless it was a condition since birth, it is always beneficial to take preventative measures at any point in time. If you're listening to this and think some of these apply to me, remember, just because you have diabetes or high blood pressure, you are not guaranteed to get Alzheimer's. Same goes for genetics. If you find that you have the gene, you might or might not get it. There is no definitive answer. Now, moving on to things you can do. This is the exciting part of my project, as you can actually take action. But to make this a little more engaging, I'm going to do a quiz. I need one member of every house to answer a question. Now, this is going to be based on the dues of my project. So, if you're in Cassiopeia and feel like you'd like to answer a question, please raise your hand. All right, Wyatt, please stand up and answer the question loudly. If you do not know the answer to this question, you can ask another person from your house to act as the call your friend option. Okay, true or false? The more education you engage in, the lower the risk of Alzheimer's. True. Yes, the more education and mentally stimulating activity, the better. All right, now, stand up if you've gone through elementary school. All right, stay standing if you have or are going through middle school. Sit down if you haven't. Now, how many of you graduated from high school? Lastly, who has done any type of school beyond high school? Well, I would like to say congratulations, you will not get Alzheimer's. Okay, just kidding. But what if I told you school is actually good for you? I know it seems obvious, but the more school you do, the better. The more Sudokus, word puzzles, anything that challenges your brain is beneficial. So keep learning. All right, moving on to Orion. Oh, wait, sorry. Moving on to Orion. Maya. All right, remember, if you do not know the answer, you can ask someone else in your house. What percent from 0 to 100 do you think physical activity helps in lowering the risk of Alzheimer's? Like it reduces it by 50, 30, 80, whatever. Take a guess. Ooh, close. It was found to lower the risk of dementia by 57%. Staying active by playing sports, running, walking, cycling, even gardening can all be beneficial. Engaging in physical activity cannot increase your risk. It can only protect you. Now, Pleiades. All right, Rowan, stand up. Does hearing loss increase or decrease your risk of Alzheimer's? Yes, the answer is hearing loss increases your risk of Alzheimer's. This was surprising and unexpected, as I wasn't even aware this was a risk factor. But hearing loss isn't good for your Alzheimer's risk. This can be a pre-existing condition. However, 1/3 of people over the age of 55 develop hearing loss. There is a major increase in risk of Alzheimer's if you have specifically age-related hearing loss. Additionally, a common result of hearing loss is social isolation, depression, and overall lower quality of life, which can all directly correlate with Alzheimer's risk factors. Fortunately, the help of a hearing aid has shown significant decrease in risk. Therefore, when you all become, old, and if you start to lose your hearing, the best course of action would be to get a hearing aid or somehow treat the hearing loss. All right, finally, Andromeda. Amaya. Right. True or false? Meat is a good thing to eat against the risk of Alzheimer's. Oh, the answer is false. All right, now there are a few different diets you should be aware of. The Western diet. It consists of high amount of ultra-processed foods, fats, and importantly meat, but low intakes of fruits, vegetables, grains, and nuts. This diet can be seen commonly in North America. The next is the Mediterranean diet, that focuses on fish, olive oil, cereals, fruits, vegetables, and nuts, and small amount of meat. The dietary approach is to stop hypertension, or DASH diet, emphasizes grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and to minimize salt intake, with moderate fish and poultry, and limits red meats, sweets, and saturated fats. One of the key concepts is red and processed meats. It can increase your risk of Alzheimer's. A diet that is high in fats and meat both increase your risk of developing Alzheimer's and correlates strongly to obesity. Obesity is a risk factor for many confounding factors of Alzheimer's, such as cardiovascular disease. So eating a Mediterranean or DASH diet with lower amounts of meat is a healthy choice, and perhaps the healthiest of all is a vegetarian diet. Diet is a crucial part in changing your risk, and in my opinion, one of the easier ways to take action. So much so that scientists created the Mediterranean DASH intervention for neurodegenerative delay, or MIND diet, which prioritizes olive oil, fish, whole grains, berries, greens, nuts, and beans, while minimizing red and processed meats, pastries, and fried foods, as well as ideas from the plant-based diet. So, when possible, make a healthy choice. Awareness is the first step in prevention. The medical view of the disease is an undeniable aspect. However, increasing public awareness and education is just as crucial, especially when it comes to early onset and modifiable risk factors. It's important for everyone, regardless of age, to understand their personal health risks and take proactive steps. Even if you're in grade 6 or 7 with no hearing loss or cardiovascular issues, your lifestyle choices still matter. Physical activity and a healthy diet and staying mentally engaged can all help reduce the risk. Just as public knowledge about heart health has grown through education, the same level of attention is needed for Alzheimer's. Looking ahead, access to information on genetic testing and personal risks should be more widely available. Understanding those risks can help you act early. So, stay conscious, alert, and informed. We can all take meaningful steps, starting now, to help prevent or delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease. Thank you. All right, I would like to thank Amanda Zappo, my faculty advisor, the one who helped me finish my Masterworks paper and presentation, even with all my procrastination. My external advisor, Hyunwoo Lee, who helped me understand so many different aspects of my project, like finding the countless articles, making a research proposal, and setting a tour for interviews for me. Thank you. Jennifer Henriksen, the person who gave us a friendly reminder, not so friendly reminder, that due dates were coming up and who would give us the reality check. Thank you. I would like to thank my parents and who helped me generate ideas with my topic back in September. I would also like to honor my fellow grade 9s who had to go through this. We made it together, and thank you for making me feel not completely behind. And a shout out to the people I interviewed at UBC, Dr. Yara Alcoder, the neurologist who gave me a lot of insight in the diagnosis process, a psychometrist who administers many tests for case studies, Alyssa Maletta, along with the research coordinator, Jessica Luke, as well as my English tutor, Jen Clark, who helped me manage my stress and who planned out everything with me when I first came up to her with this huge year-long project called Masterworks in the summer. And finally, thank you for coming to my Masterworks presentation and your participation. Thank you for everything, everyone. Oh, I forgot. I forgot to do questions.
As Ms. Park has said, we are now onto the question period, so we are going to hand it over to her advisor first.
I think you just speak.
All right.
Yeah.
Right, so
It's not a mic, it's for our online.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So congratulations on a great presentation, Ms. Park. And it was very engaging and very clear, very focused, and it was very informative. This actually reflects a lot of dedication and very much hard work. And I very congratulate again for the excellent job.
Yeah.
So I actually have two questions. So at the beginning of the project, one thing we discussed was that every research starts with a question and ends with new questions. And usually the new questions usually stem from the most interesting find you make from the project. So in that sense, I wanted to ask you, what is the most interesting thing you found during this project? And second question is, if you were to continue on this Alzheimer's research, what kind of new questions you want to answer that builds upon this research?
Thank you. And I think the most interesting thing I learned, and I mentioned this in my presentation, is hearing loss has a risk factor. Like, I didn't even begin to think that this was a risk factor, but after looking into it, it makes a lot of sense because when you have hearing loss, you use different parts of the brain. And it was found that in the right temporal lobe, which is responsible for nonverbal communication, that there was a lot of brain atrophy and like loss of brain weight and volume. And so I think that was the most interesting thing for me, and I think it was just very cool. And the second part was what I want to do further. And in the beginning, I originally said, like I said, I wanted to do early onset Alzheimer's disease, a very basic presentation on that, but it's not very basic, as I realized. But I wanted to do some things on genetics. And I think because I've done the modifiable risk factors, I think I kind of want to move to the unmodifiable and look into the genetics a little bit more. I think that's my question.
Yeah, so that's a very important topic. So I encourage you to do it.
Thank you, Ms. Park. You took a topic that's probably not on the minds of most people in this room and made it super relatable, very informative, and gave us a sense of agency, which is really important. My question is a bit about your process. So you, in your paper, which a lot of your paper is not in the presentation because it was very in-depth, you had 6 or 7 pages of references. So in order to write a formal research procedure proposal, you did a lit review. Can you talk a little bit about what is a lit review and what was your process of research?
Right, so literature review is basically you get like scholarly articles that are like at least 10 pages long really most of the time, and you read it and you summarize it and you condense it into, and that's what I did in my main findings section of my paper. And so it was a lot of reading, I think, like weeks, like months of reading. But it was also like, I spent a lot of my time finding articles that I needed to like see on like Google Scholar and PubMed Central to make sure it was up to date and make sure it was like scholarly, I guess. As well as Hyoru asked me to do a research proposal, and that was really, I think it was really insightful. The research proposal like included a lot of like what I needed to do very concisely, and that also required like a couple weeks of reading before I could write that research proposal. But yeah, that was my kind of process.
Right.
It took a while.
And I was impressed because you had your iPad and you had notes on one document and you had it all sort of organized over multiple documents. Has this process made you want to do this more or less?
I think I do want to do it, maybe just not on this large of a scale, like maybe just like a couple pages, like not maybe not like 40. But yeah, I think so. Yeah. I would like to do it more.
And you must have got some tips on how to read articles effectively.
Yeah, I wasted time. Like, even though I knew I was only supposed to read the intro and the conclusion and skim over, I still wasted time thinking I needed to read this. Really find articles that are straight to what you actually need to research. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Park.
Oh gosh.
Lots of questions from the floor. So first we'll go to some grade 9s.
Amazing presentation, Ms. Park. It was so informative, and you did a really good job explaining a really complex topic in a way that like everybody can understand, so that was amazing. My question for you is there a difference, like besides age, in late onset Alzheimer's and early onset Alzheimer's?
Yes, so there is, other than age, because so early onset Alzheimer's can be a little bit more unpredictable as it is less common, and it can act a lot more aggressively and lead to a shorter survival time for those individuals because it progresses a lot faster. And it was found to have a lot more like amyloid beta buildup and neurotic plaques and a whole bunch of that. But it was also, as I mentioned, mixed dementia. So late onset is more prone to have mixed dementia for individuals. But for early onset, it was found to just be like just Alzheimer's alone, not with vascular, not with FTD, but just Alzheimer's. So yeah, so that's the difference.
That was such a good presentation, Ms. Park. It was so clear and it was so clear and informative, and it was so like engaging, and it was funny at all the right parts. Great job. My question for you is, you talked about how you wanted to become a doctor a little bit. Do you think you'd go into like studying Alzheimer's and stuff like that, and you'd become a doctor in that region?
Yes. So when I went to the UBC clinic and I met Dr. Yara Alcalder, and I thought it was so cool because she was socially, like she was talking to patients hands-on, like she was talking to them and talking to them directly, but also doing like she herself did the cerebrospinal fluid, like the lumbar punctures, and I think that was really cool. And I even did that for my French interview thingy. I did as a neurologist, and so I think that would be a cool area to look into, because originally I thought neurologists were just like consulting patients, but after meeting her, it seemed a little bit more hands-on. So I thought, yeah, I think that would be a cool area to go into.
Miss Park, fantastic job. I'm so impressed. Your presentation was so clear and engaging, but it was also really thoughtful, and I'm very impressed. I was just wondering, what do you think individuals and organizations and even governments can do to engage community and individual prevention?
I think just doing more awareness all the time, like in promoting Alzheimer's Day, as I put that on my screen. I don't think anyone knows about Alzheimer's Day. Like, I didn't even know this myself. I didn't know about Alzheimer's Week or anything of that, or Alzheimer's Month. Just more awareness of like doing preventative actions, and maybe doing a week of like, oh, like the government or community center could be like, everyone do like preventive measures. And these preventative measures aren't even like crazy and outrageous things. They're like physical activity, diet. Like, those are things that you can inform everyone on a daily basis, and everyone can do. And so I think just like doing that, even in our school, like we could do like, you know, how we have heart week or whatever, heart health, you know, all of that. And a lot of them directly correlate to cardiovascular diseases, so it's like a wide range of diseases and stuff. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways.
Great presentation. My question is, you were talking about how smoking had an effect on your risk of Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. Does vaping have a similar effect?
I would assume so. So what my article that I read was primarily focused on cigarette smoking, but I don't doubt that vaping has similar effects, as many other articles state like vaping and smoking are like the similarities. So yeah, I think, yeah.
That was an amazing presentation, Miss Park. I was wondering, if you were to become a doctor and like continue on as like a serious career, would you be focused on making a cure for the
disease? Yeah.
Disease?
Yeah. I think instead of the cure aspect, I would do more of the treating. But I would still like love to be involved with the cure and development of that. But instead of being, I don't know how to say, like stuck in a lab, like I would like to interact with patients. So that's more of what I loved about the neurologist career. Yeah.
Great job, Mrs. Hartbat. Does like inhaling the smoke from smoking have like a difference, or is it just like actually smoking?
I think it's less about like the act of like smoking. It's more of the duration of smoking, like how long you do it and how long it affects your brain. Because like, I don't think like if you just inhale like one bit of smoke is going to completely change your risk. I think it's just the duration of how long and how consistent and heavy you do smoking or drinking with the same thing, because it's like more like over a long period of time that it'll affect your brain. And so that's what it's like. Quit smokers, like people who quit for a long time compared to the non-smokers have the same risk, meaning like you don't want to, like when they were evaluated, the risk was found the same. But then for current smokers and people who had only quit for like a couple years, the risk was the same. So you want to like avoid smoking, I think. Because like, or for a long period of time is the big key concept there. Yeah. Oh.
If you had more time for this project, what would you do and why would you do it?
So I think I didn't cover every single modifiable risk factor out there, and I think I could have gone a lot more. Like I've done, if I did a little bit more on air pollution and more environmental stuff, I think that would have been more interesting as well, because I missed about like sleep as well, and so The why would just probably still be the same. I would just continue with the modifiable risk factors. But if I had the chance to redo it, like not redo it, but do another one, it would be on genetics. It would be separate, yeah.
Congratulations, Ms. Parks. I understand that your paper had a lot more detail than your very detailed presentation. I'm wondering if part of what you were researching, this relates to my personal experience. My father passed away from dementia, and I recall in those final kind of years that, and maybe some leading up to it too, I think when you're watching somebody suffer from the disease, there's lots of things that I observed, and one of the things that I wonder if you found any information was like the tendency for the friend or the family member to fill in the gaps and to answer questions and to do the work that seems to be so challenging for the person who's suffering to process. And I wonder if that's helpful or not. Like I was guilty of that. Like I'd sort of answer, and maybe I should have been more patient and let my father answer.
That is a hard question, because I think as much as you want to help them or leave them to be independent, it's really hard to find that balance. So I think just doing because if you're already kind of diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I'm going to assume that it's already progressing, and more like cognitive activity might be beneficial in slowing it down, though I don't think it will I don't know. I'm unsure about that question. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it is tough.
It's a little difficult.
But
yeah.
I think what I heard you say is that slowing it down, and maybe when you're on that side of it, you got to be more patient with people and let them have more time to process. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ms. Park. You've talked a lot about, well, this Alzheimer's comes across as a sort of an old person's disease, even if you're talking about early onset. But I'm wondering, for people your age, being informed about some of these things are sort of sound diet and things like that, have you become more aware of your own health, particularly mental health and things like that? And do you change your behaviors at this age?
I would love to assume I do, but I think it has been more aware of just meat consumption, and I've known the meat risks, and I don't eat overly a lot of meat. But honestly, just keeping up with my physical activity, just knowing that I'm doing things that are good, is kind of as I was researching, oh, I do physical activity, oh, I do this, I do that, oh, I don't have hearing loss. Yeah, I think so, and I think, yeah. And I was even talking to my grandparents about it, and I was like, oh my God, you're doing so good. She's my grandma does these writing books every single day, these cognitive activities. And I'm like, oh my God, Grandma, that's so good. You're doing great. So I think, yeah, informing others, yeah.
Shucks, I hope you were going to say, no, I was going to study harder and harder and harder. That's the message for everyone.
Well, I like to get out sometimes.
Thank you. Yep.
More questions?
Oh, Carrie in the back.
Amazing work, Ms. Park. This is truly master's or even PhD level work. And I know because I got tons of your Go Guardian flags from articles that you were reading, and I snuck a peek at a few of them and was like, I do not understand what is going on here at all. So super impressive that you could digest all of this literature and really sift through what was relevant to you, what was not. Amazing work. I'm really curious to know what did you learn about yourself as a learner through this process?
That I like to leave things at the last moment. I think I learned, originally when I came across the project, I was like, I don't want to do the heavy amount of research, that's not what I want to do. But as I was reading, I didn't absolutely despise the highlighting, the reading, the understanding. And so I think I was more this is actually kind of interesting at one point, though it was a lot. So I think I discovered kind of my patterns when I'm researching or reading and stuff. And I think I became a faster reader, just a wee bit. Yeah, not deep, but.
Truly, truly incredible, Ms. Park. I now understand why you have been reading for Masterworks during your English reading time all year. My question for you is, I have read in the past that small adjustments in your day, taking a different route to work, or switching hands when you use your toothbrush, or trying a different method when you're cooking, if you're doing it regularly, can really prevent Alzheimer's or other neurodegenerative disease later in life. And I really do this every day. So can you use science to either validate or invalidate me in that?
I think that you are challenging your brain in a different way every single time you do that, or you change the toothbrush. I've heard of those things as well. And cognitive activity, like cognitive decline was like something that they measured in every single research article, like every single time. And so just doing more cognitive activity is like so beneficial, I think, and just like keeping your brain up to date instead of doing the same thing over and over. So. Go Lily!
Oh, sure. And then Maya.
Oh yeah, sorry. Just to add on to that question then, because you mentioned that Alzheimer's is predicted to like triple in the next while. So are we in like a cognitive decline crisis, or what is happening in our world that's happening?
I think people are just not aware of these little things that they can be doing, or out of like I don't think a lot of people knew that it was going to triple right now until I told you about that. And so I don't know if we're in like a crisis, but I do think we need to take action and take steps, and everyone can do those things. Yeah.
That was a great presentation, and it was really interesting. I have a question. Do you think that climate change will affect Alzheimer's later on? Like if it's better or worse, and how?
That is a cool question. I don't think I've ever thought about that. Like maybe with air pollution, like I don't know, with like the environmental aspect of it. Like if you're in a different environment than another person, you might be increased like risk. So yeah, I think that is a cool thing to look into. But yeah, maybe. I think so.
Do you think that like with all of like the scrolling we're doing nowadays would have any effect on Alzheimer's? Because like I know like I'll scroll for a little while and then I'll like walk into another room to do something and I'll like forget what I'm doing because my attention span is that short now. Do you think that'll like affect it?
I do, and I am a person who does a lot of scrolling as well. But I do think that does affect it because your brain is not actually doing anything. Like you're just watching and watching and watching. I'm not entirely sure if there's like really big harm. Do you know? Would you know? Oh, social isolation, that is a big one, yeah. So like if you aren't meeting your friends or like all that stuff, you're not interacting with people, that's also, it can be a risk factor that I didn't cover, but that is also a risk factor. So staying home and just scrolling is a factor.
Wonderful presentation. But does like not like alcohol in specific, but like any other like beverages that like affect it?
Well, I think high sugar intake or high like fat intake is also a big thing about diet, along with like just unhealthy like fast foods and stuff. So I don't know about particularly a beverage, but I don't think like sugar will decrease your risk is what I will say. Yeah, as far as I know.
Okay, final questions. Anyone? Josh?
Oh, me.
Carrie.
When you're talking early onset, like Alzheimer's, what is the like youngest age that people might experience or start to experience symptoms of Alzheimer's?
So I know there in China, like recently, there was a 19-year-old who got diagnosed, but that's not it. That's just, I think I just heard that. But I think it's usually around like 40 to 65 is like kind of the beginning. Like 40 is probably the youngest that we will see at the moment. There's a trend of early onset Alzheimer's going like younger and younger and younger. Wow. So even like 10 years ago, it was like 60 or 65. Like that's like the youngest, but now it's already to like 40, and so.
Okay, so if you were to give some advice to someone who maybe say has like Alzheimer's in their family and they're worried about a genetic factor, what advice would you give them?
Like you can't obviously do anything about genetics, you can't do anything about your aging. But the best thing to do is start with preventative measures. Continue with preventative measures like physical activity, diet, like really focus on your diet. I think that's the biggest one people can change at them like instantly kind of. But if you know that you have an unmodifiable risk factor, you should start with the modifiables right away. Like that's, I think, the biggest key takeaway, yeah.